Okay, so today we're going to be talking about compound inequalities. And compound inequalities really means that we are dealing with two inequalities. So we're dealing with two inequalities, compound meaning two. Usually they're going to be and, or they could be an or. Today we're going to deal just with the and problems. So when we take a look at example number 1 here, and we'll add some more notes as we go here. Instead of just graphing this right on our answer line, we're going to use what we call, or what I call, helper graphs. And yes, you need to do the helper graphs. So on this, if I take a look at this first inequality and graph it, it says that b is greater than a -1. So I'm going to go down to a -1. Instead of putting an open circle at a -1, because remember it doesn't have the line underneath of it, I'm going to go above the -1. I'm going to put an open circle above the -1. And then this says it's greater than, and remember this is actually pointing which direction we're going to go, pointing me to the right. So I graphed b is greater than a -1. Okay, now the second inequality that we're working with is b is less than or equal to 3. So we're going to go to the 3, and then this time we're going to put a closed circle above the 3 because it has this equal in it, and it says it's less than 3, so we're going to draw our line going to the left. So we've graphed our two inequalities. Now, here's the important thing that we need to jot down here. Since we're dealing with an and, okay, we look for where they overlap. Okay, overlap. That's going to be our answer. Where they overlap is what we're going to graph for our answer. So when we take a look at this, we look at where these two lines overlap. And these two lines, when we look at them, they start to overlap right here. And then they overlap all the way up to here. So what you see me highlighting here in blue, this is our answer. And that's what we're going to put on our answer graph. So now we go down to our answer graph. We're going to put an open circle at a -1. We're going to put a closed circle at a +3. And then our answer, and what we put on our answer graph, is where they overlap. Okay? That's our answer, because it makes these two statements true. In order for it to be a correct answer, it has to make both statements true. So all of these numbers in here would be greater than a -1, but they would also be, or and, they would also be less than 3. So greater than a -1, less than 3. That's our answer. Now, of course, we have to do the set builder notation. Set builder notation for this is going to be a little bit different. So we always start with our bracket, and then our b such that. Now, here's where I want you to think in terms of, we're going to have a blank, and a b, a blank, and then our brackets. Now, when you do set builder notation, okay, with and statements, your symbol, your inequality, must always be the less than or the less than or equal to. Okay? So we have to use only, let's see if I can write here, only the less than or equal to symbol when we're putting our answer in this. That's where our It gets a little bit different. We can never have greater than. It always has to be less than. And so we're going to describe by putting the smallest number here on our graph. In this case, it's a -1. And then this says, if we read this, b would be greater than a -1. b would be less than or equal to 3. Okay, so we have our less than and equal to symbols in here, and we start, when we read this, we would go b such that, and we go to the variable, b is greater than a -1, b is less than or equal to 3, which describes our graph. Okay, so write that down, and then let's take a look here at problem number 2. Remember, you can pause the video to write down everything that you need to write down. Don't let me rush you. And that's the great thing about the video. All right, so on number 2, I'm going to look at this. We have our variable here that's in the middle. Well, we need to rewrite it so that this part of it is written in the correct order. And so we need to flip it. So we're going to write the Q first, and then remember what I told you is that if this is open to the variable here, it needs to be open to the variable here. So then we would have Q is greater than a -2, and now we need to describe this part of it. Q is less than or equal to 5. So we want to have it in this form here before we actually put it onto our graph. So first thing I'm going to graph is this part over here, which says that Q is greater than or equal to -2. So I'm going to go to -2. Remember, use your helper graph, so we're going to go above it. And I'm going to put a closed circle because it has the equal than or the equal to under it. It's greater than a -2, and so I draw my line to the right. To graph the other side, Q is less than or equal to 5. I need to extend my number line a little bit here. Here would be 3, here would be 4, here would be 5. And above that, I'm going to put a closed circle at 5 and a line going to the right. Remember, the and here tells us to graph where they overlap. This will become real important when we start dealing with the OR problems. Our answer is where they overlap. So my answer to this one, they start overlapping here, and they're going to overlap all the way up to here. So this that I just shaded in blue is our actual answer. So on our answer graph, we're going to put a closed circle at a -2. We're going to put a closed circle at 5, and then a line in between as our answer. Because anything that we have put on our answer has to make both of these statements true. So if I picked 1 here, and I plugged 1 in for Q, 1 is greater than a -2. That's true. So I have to put it in here. 1 is less than 5. That's true. So that could be one of our answers. Now, for our subnumber notation, again, here's my suggestion to you on this, is that you would go Q such that, and think in terms of a blank, Q blank, and then our brackets. Now, it's really easy, or it gets easy, if you think that the only thing I can have here is the less than or the less than or equal to symbol. Okay? Both of these have the equal to part. So Q is greater than or equal to, put our smallest number here, put our largest number here. Here's my smallest number, -2, goes here. The biggest number, 5, goes here. Q goes between them. Both of the inequalities are pointing to the left, which means they're less than. So our answer, the set of Q, all Q's, such that Q is greater than or equal to -2, Q is less than or equal to 5. Okay? If you have questions on this, you certainly can get a hold of me and ask. I will do my best to answer all your questions. So I'm actually going to skip example number 3 and go to example number 4. Example number 4 is a little bit different. So on example number 2, x is greater than a -2. So I'm going to go down here to my -2 and put an open circle and a line going to the right. When I graph this one here, x is greater than 1, I go to my 1, put an open circle on it, line going to the right. Remember, and is overlap. So now our answer is where these two overlap. They begin to overlap right here. So the only thing that I put on my answer graph is where they overlap. So on my answer graph, I'm going to put an open circle at 1 and then a line going to the right. And since both of these have arrows on them, I need to have an arrow on this one as well. So here's my answer. Okay. Now, for my set builder notation, it would be x such that x is greater than 1. Remember, we're just describing what's going on the graph. Okay, so let's take a look here at number 5. Again, first thing I look at when I see this is this one here's not written in what I would call the correct order. And so I want to write it with the variable being first. Since the inequality is pointing to the D here, it needs to be pointing to the D here, and then add the 3 on, and then and D is greater than or less than or equal to a -2. So let's take a look at this here, and let's grab this first one. D is less than 3. Above the 3, using our helper graphs, open circle. Remember, no equal underneath of it, so it's open, and it's less than 3, so the line going to the left. D is less than or equal to a -2, so I'm going to have a closed circle above the -2. Again, this tells me to close the circle. Less than, inequality is pointing to the left, so I write my answer to the left. Now, like I've been saying every time, since this has an and in it, our answers where they overlap. So they begin to overlap right here, and they overlap going then this direction. So my answer is going to be a closed circle at -2, and my line going to the left. Okay? Been writing this in set builder notation. We would write it as D such that D is less than or equal to -2. Okay. All right, last one we'll take a look at, and we'll have you do some problems on your own. This one, again, the first thing I've looked at is I've made sure that these are both written in the correct order with the variable being first. So now I can graph this one. D is greater than 3. So I'm going to come down here, put an open circle, and a line going to the right, and then I'm going to come down here and graph this one here. D is less than a -1, so we're going to have an open circle here and a line going this direction. Remember here, we're looking for where they overlap. Okay, so we look where they overlap. They don't. Okay, so we would not put anything on our answer graph. On this one, there's no solution because, excuse me, they don't overlap anywhere. So there's no solution. All right, so we're going to stop here with our examples, and you can check on Canvas for your assignment. If you have any questions, get a hold of me. I will be available. Email me, text me, call me, whatever you need to do to get some help if you need. Thanks.